Hey there, and welcome to another episode of MaloneBailey's official podcast, Everybody Counts. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm Caroline Rosen, and I'm from the marketing department here at MaloneBailey. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, MaloneBailey is a CPA firm based in Houston, and we are among the top 11 CPA firms worldwide that represent over 100 public company clients. So we have this podcast, Everybody Counts, which features various perspectives on a variety of topics. So from the latest SEC and FASB updates to discussions on soft skills, practice management, and much more, this podcast explores trends and hot topics that affect us and those in our business. We invite you to tune in to hear from partners and staff alike. The conversation is versatile and everybody's input counts. Today's podcast focuses on a really interesting topic, and I'm delighted to be joined by a special guest who I'll introduce in just a moment. We want you to know that this podcast is part of a three-part series that focuses on the process of uplisting or upgrading between market tiers. This series will feature interviews with representatives from OTC, NASDAQ, and the New York Stock Exchange. The entire series is available on our website in the resources section at www.MaloneBailey.com. It's a really important topic because we often get questions about the process, what it entails, and what a company should be mindful of when moving from one exchange or tier to the other. And so joining me to discuss the topic of upgrading from one OTC market tier to another is Jason Paltrowitz, who is the Executive Vice President of Corporate Services at OTC Markets Group. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you.
Well, hopefully, we don't take up too much of your time, but we've been really looking forward to having you on our podcast again. This is not your first rodeo. We've had you on a couple months ago to discuss the 2017 OTC Markets Group Small Cap Survey, which actually happened to be one of our most listened to podcasts. Did you know that?
I did not, but my mother will be proud.
Congratulations. Well, you have an impressive background. I was reviewing your bio. It states you're an advocate for small cap issuers, startups, and entrepreneurial innovators. And so before we dive into our conversation, would you please tell us just a little bit more about yourself and your role at OTC Markets Group?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm Executive Vice President of Corporate Services here at OTC Markets. Prior to joining, I was actually on the board of OTC Markets for some 3 to 4 years as well. So I've been part of this organization, and I've known the CEO for many years. Spent most of my career actually in the large cap space, cross-border equities, collateral management, clearing, kind of big bank stuff. And really about 5 or 6 years ago, decided to shift gears a little and focus on something I'm a little more passionate about, which is the small cap and the early stage growth. And so my job here, I am responsible for, in effect, our corporate services business, which is, in effect, the listings business at OTC Markets. So bringing companies public, affording them the opportunity to be public companies and helping them be better public companies using our markets and the services that we provide.
Okay. Wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about OTC Markets Group in general. And can you give us an overview of the various OTC markets, as well as the demographics of the companies trading on those markets?
Sure. So we operate 3 market tiers, and you can really split those out between the 2 premium market tiers and then kind of it's called our pink tier. So that's what we call the open market. So going from bottom to top, pink is a broker-dealer market, right? Pink affords the broker-dealer and the trading community the ability to trade any equity without really company involvement. So you have a significant number of early stage companies, you have distressed companies, you have bankrupt companies, you have a lot of global companies that just aren't engaged with the US market. So that pink market gives, again, the trading community the ability to buy and sell securities without really much company involvement. People talk negatively a lot about the pink market, but it actually serves a very significant purpose in the US equity space in that, namely, it does give investors the ability to have a public price for equities, specifically bankrupt equities, that in other markets you wouldn't have. So as an example, when American Airlines went bankrupt, had it been in most other countries, investors in American Airlines wouldn't have known what to do. They wouldn't have been able to buy and sell American Airlines. The pink market is the natural place for those types of companies to go, and helps protect investors and allows them to continue to be able to trade and see pricing information. So that's what we call our open market. We then move up to our two premium tiers, and I think that's really the more significant part of this. Our OTC QB venture market and our what we call our OTC QX best market. The QB venture market is just that. It's a market for really early stage growth and developing companies. Both QB and QX are what's called SEC established public markets. Both of these markets have rules and requirements to be on them. QB is much more lighter touch, no financial requirements, but a significant amount of disclosure requirement, and some minimum trading price requirements and things like that. So this is a public market that gives really early stage venture companies the ability to learn how to be public companies. You then go up the chain to our QX market, and that we call our best market. That market has high financial standards. That market has, some lighter touch corporate governance requirements, and really is for companies that are past that early stage. These are kind of SEC regulated or registered companies, although not all of them are. These are companies that are some of the largest global brands in the world that choose our market to have their second. So if you think of names like Roche and Adidas and Heineken, companies that are on foreign exchanges that come here. And then a lot of kind of further along US companies that either aren't ready or don't want to take on the expense and the exposure of being listed on a national exchange. So within all of our markets, we're talking about over 10,000 securities. If you look at our top two premium markets, you're looking at about 1,500 securities, roughly plus or minus. The QB market has about an average market cap of 12 million. And if you look at the QX market, you're looking at an average market cap upwards of around 300 million. Now on our QX market, we also, I'm going a little long-winded, but we also have a special segment which is specifically designed for community banks. And so we have about 80 US community banks that also use our QX market, again, because they're regulated already by their banking regulator, and they don't want to take on the expense and exposure of being regulated as an SEC filer or an exchange listed company. So we service a lot of different companies and a lot of different verticals, all with kind of the one mission is that, disclosure and transparency. And if we can create a market where companies can be transparent, can be open, that investors are the best arbiter of what's investable and what's not, and that's the best way for companies to be public.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. So when a company comes to you and says they want to make a change, what are the most common reasons a company decides to upgrade from one of the OTC market tiers to another?
The primary reason is that these are companies that want to engage their investors. I mean, you're really talking about, as you move up our chain from pink to QB to QX, you're really talking about increasing the securities investability. And so when you look at a company that wants to go from QB to QX, they want the fact that they're not a penny stock. They want the ability to be able to have access to a lot of the visibility and investor relations services that we provide. They want to have the branding and the name recognition of being on the best possible market that they can be on. And so that's really the conversation. When companies come out of pink and want to upgrade to QB, they want to be on an established public market. They want to be on an SEC recognized market. They want to have blue sky exemption. Our QB and QX markets are recognized for purposes of blue sky in almost 29 to 30 markets and growing. And so the ability to give their shareholders access to timely and accurate information, to be more transparent, to get rid of some of the trading hurdles that happen on the pink market from a clearing perspective or from an investment perspective. Because pink has a lot of dark and distressed companies, there are a lot of trading restrictions to be on that market. And so for companies that are looking to engage their shareholders and grow their company, and that want their shareholders to be able to buy and sell easily, deposit at their Fidelity account or their Schwab account, they want to be on an established public market. They want to get rid of as many hurdles as possible. And that's kind of why they move up the chain.
Okay, got it. So let's talk about standards. What are the criteria a company must meet to move from pink to OTCQB or from OTCQB to OTCQX?
Right. So the QX standard is the highest standard. And those are really, we follow what's called the SEC penny stock rule. So you cannot be a penny stock on the QX market. And that's important. And I want to reiterate that, people that don't know or that think they know say, oh, anything on OTC is a penny stock. And that's actually not true. And it's why we created OTCQX. Is all of the companies on OTCQX are actually not penny stocks as defined by the SEC. And so that is the key requirement, is that you can't be a penny stock, which is a stock that's priced either above $5 or meets a net tangible asset or a revenue test. And so that's the SEC definition. In addition to that, we require some lighter touch corporate governance, which is you have to have independent directors. You need to have an audit committee. You need to hold an annual shareholder meeting. You need to distribute proxy. You need to do those types of things. And then all of your financials need to be made public, and they need to be timely in their disclosure and all of those things. So that's kind of the QX best practice. Very similar to what you would find on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ, but we're a little lighter touch on the corporate governance because we don't think that smaller companies need to have things like compensation committees or, a lot of the stuff that's in Sarbanes-Oxley. It's just expensive. You're paying for a lot of money for stuff that you probably don't need when you're in this space. On QB, we don't have a financial requirement, but we have a significant amount of disclosure requirements. So we have to know who your board is. We have to know who your insiders are. We do background checks on all of those types of things. You need to have a minimum 1 penny bid price, and you need to have, again, you need to be audited, and you need to be up to date in your audits, and you need to be fully disclosing. On both of these markets, we have a promotion policy. And so we're actively monitoring companies that are doing, whether it's anonymous third-party promotions or even insider promotions of securities, right? So we have rules around promoting stock as well. So those are kind of the key requirements for those two markets. And again, pink, there is no requirement. It's a broker market. Companies are not involved in whether or not they're traded on that market. It's really the broker dealer that decides whether or not they want to have a public quote for that equity. And it's the broker dealers that kind of put companies on the pink market, for lack of a better term. Okay.
All right, so moving on to process. How does the process work if a company wants to move from pink to OTCQB or from OTCQB to OTCQX?
Well, the process is pick up the phone and talk to one of my very willing, able, intelligent team that will really walk a company or their advisor through the process, right? So there's an application process. They have to meet those criteria. We have a fantastic compliance team in DC that does all of the checks and does the background reviews and works with the company to fill out the applications and make sure that we have the right information and it's timely and accurate. We really try to make it as simple as possible. I think, part of a lot of, you said at the beginning that I'm very passionate about small caps. And I think one of the things that has hurt small caps is that the national exchanges really aren't equipped to meet their needs. And if you look at an NYSE or a NASDAQ and all of the documentation and things that you need to provide, it's a little excessive and expensive. And so we try to make it a little more streamlined and use disclosure and transparency as the guide, rather than what we'll say a lot of expensive experts that do merit review on companies that are probably a little out of whack. Companies also need on our QX market a third-party sponsor. So similar to if your listeners kind of look at the AIM market in the UK, that concept of a nomad on the AIM market, we kind of have that here with a third-party sponsor. That's usually a lawyer or an approved lawyer or an approved investment bank that kind of does the third-party check to make sure that you meet the requirements. Then, of course, there's an application fee and a yearly fee. And once kind of all those I's are dotted and T's are crossed, you can be on the market for which you're applying.
Okay, wonderful. So what do you hear in terms of some of the common challenges a company might encounter as they navigate the process of moving from one OTC market to another?
Probably some of the challenges we see for some companies, it's around that promotion policy. It's tough if it is an anonymous third-party promotion, right? And you haven't really, as the company, been involved, but there are things out there that are touting your company. It really causes a company to have to get ahead of that. That doesn't mean you're not going to get approved. It just means that you have to, as a company, be out the forefront of that and say, this isn't us. We don't endorse this. And for a lot of companies that haven't been public before or haven't been proactive in being public, getting ahead of those types of things that are out of their control. I won't say it's a hurdle, but it's just something that opens up kind of their eyes a little bit. But for the most part, it's relatively simple. If you have a company that's doing the right things, they're being audited by a PCAOB auditor, and they're timely in their disclosure, and they're transparent, and they're not doing anything, unseemly from a promotion perspective. If they have a good lawyer and a good accountant, the process is relatively simple, and there aren't a lot of bumps. We do have companies that want to join that have, we have a banned attorney list, right? The reality is that in this world, there are a lot of bad actors, and we spend a lot of time weeding out those bad actors.
Right.
And so, those could be some issues, but usually if you're a good company with a good lawyer and a good auditor and a good story, it's a relatively simple process.
Okay, good to hear. So in terms of words of wisdom, Jason, what advice do you have for a company that is considering an upgrade within OTC markets?
The words of wisdom I always give is that once you're on our QX or our QB market, that isn't the end, it's the beginning. Okay. Right. And so even on the exchanges, there are a lot of companies that, they listed on New York or NASDAQ or QX. We're done. We've made it. And it's actually the opposite. It's you're starting. And you need to be the best public company that you can be. And you need to focus on being a public company. And focus on being a public company means timely and accurate information. I was on a panel a couple of weeks ago. Transparency, transparency, transparency.
Yeah.
And you really need to be diligent about it, and you need to be focused on it, and everything you do needs to have that in mind. And a lot of the early stage companies, whether the CEO is the founder or the guy that created the technology, they don't necessarily know what it means to be a public company, and it really does require a little bit of a gear shift in mindset. And so we spend a lot of time helping our issuers understand that, and helping them navigate that through some of the products and services we offer with the listing. I'll throw in, it's not just about upgrading within our markets. We're very proud of the fact that, one of the things we do is, like I said, help companies be public. And so last year, we actually graduated over 60 companies from our markets to a national exchange. In comparison, that's way more than any other venture market around the world.
Wow.
That's more than the TSX Venture did to Toronto. It's more than AIM did to the London Stock Exchange. So while we're helping companies move up in our markets, it's also, very proud of the fact that we help them then graduate to a national exchange. And we hope that when they do, they're ready, right? They know what it means to be a public company. We give them the kind of the runway to be able to learn how to do that before they graduate up.
All right. Well, congratulations on that. So Jason, where do you recommend companies go to find more information, or who can they speak with at OTC Markets to ask questions?
Well, our website, which we just redesigned and relaunched, so that's otcmarkets.com. You'll get, if you go to the corporate services section, it's really broken down by getting started and what you need to think about for each market and what you need to do. You can certainly call anyone here at OTC Markets, and our phone numbers and contact information are all over the website. My team in New York, and we have our compliance team in DC. I think the number is 212-896-4400. You press 1, you'll get the compliance people. If you press 2, you'll get the client or the relationship management people, depending on which way you want to go.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So we appreciate you sharing all this insight today. I know that so many of our clients and those who operate in our space will find this information extremely useful. And we have just a couple more questions for you. So, you know, from being on our podcast the last time around, that we have a this or that section, which is where our guests choose between 2 options, and the topic's going to be completely unrelated to what we've been talking about today. So last time we spoke sports, but this time we're going to talk food, given you're in what so many consider to be the food capital of the world, New York City. So shall we get started?
Yes.
All right, so you're a busy guy, you're on the go, and sometimes you've got to grab some street food. It's going to be a hot dog or a pretzel?
Oh, wow. It's going to be, in New York, it's going to be a pretzel.
All right, cool. Little Italy or Chinatown?
Little Italy.
Or food. Okay, Little Italy. Now, on the topic of delis, so I was doing a little bit of research, and I'm aware that one of these options has closed, but did you prefer Katz's or Carnegie Deli?
Katz's.
Katz's. Is that the resounding
7 days a week and twice on Sunday. Katz's, hands down.
Hands down. Okay. I mean, that's a stop that my family and I always make every time we're in New York. I just didn't know what, a native New Yorker.
I've been going, so I'm as you remember from the last time, I'm born and raised Manhattan.
Right,
and have been going to Katz's Deli since I was probably with my grandparents and my parents since I was probably 1.
All right.
So I never stray. I'm loyal. I don't stray.
You're loyal. Got it. All right, Katz's it is. Well, Jason, thank you so much for playing along. Please be sure to check out OTC online at otcmarkets.com. As I had mentioned before, there are a ton of great resources, lots of great videos, webinars. OTC has a great newsletter and blog as well. Jason, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with us today, and hopefully we'll get to reconnect with you in the near future.
My pleasure. Thank you. And now I'm going to go get a pastrami sandwich.
At Katz's, of course.
Of course.
So to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope you found the conversation to be insightful and resourceful. And as always, I invite you to check out our website, www.MaloneBailey.com, where you can find other episodes from our podcast, as well as past versions of our newsletter, which contains lots of great SEC and FASB updates and much more information about our service offering. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.